Welcome to the if function lesson. As you can see, I've created a tab called the if function. So if you didn't catch that a second ago, you now can read it there, the if function. And I've set the sheet up such that these are set to 50 pixels wide by 50, you know where we've gone, 50 pixels wide by 50 pixels high, and say you calibrate that to where you want. And then I use the border tool just to select a set of cells. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a value in this cell. Now, partly to make this pretty and everything else, well, actually it's purely to make this pretty, I'm just going to center all of those. I'm going to put a value in this cell and this cell. And in this one, I'm going to put a value in this cell and that cell. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do a function, and we've already got our head around the function because we learned about the mod function. But the if function is one of those functions that asks a question, just like the word if does in the English language. It says, if something is true, then do this. So the if function in Excel does exactly the same thing that we do in English. Oh, if you do that, I'll do this. Otherwise, I'll do that. Sometimes we don't define the otherwise. There's an implied otherwise. I won't do the first action. So let's have a look at what this if function looks like. We already know that to tell Excel we're going to do something, we press the equal sign. And we already know the name of the function we're interested in, if. We use the if function if we've got a situation where we want a cell to act based upon two or more conditions. Now, what we're looking for, just remember every function is its function name followed by an open brackets. As soon as I do that, Excel knows what I'm looking at and it gives me a little bit of help. The very first thing I need to do is tell it what I'm testing. So all I'm going to do is say if logical test, if this cell here, notice I click on it, there's the ants going around, so it's saying if E3, and if I look up in the formula bar or even in the cell, I can see it's got E3. If E3 is greater than 3, well it is because it's 4, then value if true. Now I could very simply here just put another value. I'm just going to get a letter. Now I can't just put Y, because you can see Excel says, oh, okay, you want another function. So how do I put the letter Y or a word or anything else? Well, what I do is I use speech marks. I start with a speech mark, I put Y, and then I close the speech mark. And that simply tells Excel that I want the letter Y. It's not the beginning of the name of a function. If it's not, then I want it to put no or N. And again, I've surrounded that with speech marks because if I don't, as soon as I press N, it says, oh, you want a function. So I'll put speech marks. Close the brackets off, press it, enter. And as soon as I do that, I'm going to go back to there. You can see there's the if statement and it's put Y. But if I change the content of this to 3, it will put N. If I put any value over 3, it will put Y. So the if statement allows me, and let's just go back and have a look at it, allows me to have a cell react based upon a condition, that condition of this cell here. And that's really handy. Remember, every cell can hold only one thing. So it can't be a condition on itself. That's called a circular argument. But what it can do is refer to another cell and say, right, well, if that cell's got this value, then I should be this. And that can be a value in itself. You could decide that you want that to be another cell. Let's have a look at that. Let's use the same idea. If, open brackets, this cell is greater than 3, then. The comma means then. And you can see as soon as I press the comma, the second option becomes available. And whenever I type in the if statement, I do talk myself through it. So if this is true, then what? Well, let's click on this cell. So that basically is telling Excel if the cell E5 is greater than 3, then make this cell, the cell with a formula, equal to whatever's in I5. And then all I'm going to do is close the brackets off. So there you go. It now says 2 because this cell here, if E5 is greater than 3, well it is, it's 4, comma, make me equivalent to I5, which it is. So it's made it the same. But what happens if I change this? Well, I get a word false. And that's because Excel says, well, okay, the condition hasn't worked. You haven't told me what to do. So I'm just going to put up what I've got, which is the word false. Basically, what happens is this E5 greater than 3 comes back with one of two statements, true or false. For example, if I go back to the formula and I put a second comma there, the I5 becomes the condition if it's false. If E5 is not greater than 3, now make me equivalent to I5. But I've got nothing in the middle. And I'm just going to press enter, and that works because 3 is not greater than 3. So this now makes itself equal to that. But if I make this 4, it now gives me 0 because it doesn't know what to do. I haven't told it what to do. In this case, I don't get the true. I simply get a 0 because it doesn't know what to do. And 0 might be fine. I might want the cell, and let's just remove that comma. So if I do that and I put that back to 3, we get the false. So I go back to there. I might want it to be equal to 0. So that's okay. I just do comma 0, and now that works. I might want the cell to be empty. Well, one of the easiest ways to do that is simply to use two speech marks with nothing in between. That tells the computer that you want nothing in there. And if I press enter, it's completely and utterly empty. If I put anything else in there, so if I went back there and put a space in there, then yes, that would look the same, but then there would be a space in there. And if I wanted to test that cell to see if it was empty, then it wouldn't be because there would be a space in there. And that's one of the curious things. From a computer's point of view, the space is just like a letter or a number or a symbol. It's something that is in there. So though we can't see it to the computer, it does exist. So be careful of putting spaces between the speech marks. If you just leave them speech mark to speech mark with nothing in between, you get the empty. Okay. What else could I do? Well, I could have a situation where I want to react to more than one event. So let's have a look at something else. Equals if, open brackets, if this cell is greater than this cell. So I can do that. I can test two cells. Yes, no. And therefore, all I've got to do is change those. So I can again, in a formula, very simply compare two cells and say, are they similar? Are they identical? I could do that very simply by putting an equal sign in there. Clearly they're not, but if I make that 2 now they are. So I can test the cell and I can perform a calculation in the argument. If I wanted to, I could tell it not to do Y, but I could tell it to do that cell, and notice I've clicked on it again, multiplied by that cell. I don't know why I would do that, but I could. And if I change that, it won't do the calculation, but if I now do that, it will do the calculation. And so that will work as well. So I can do calculations, I can put other functions in there if I wanted to. It would be quite easy to do that. For example, it wouldn't make any sense to do this, but we've already learnt about the mod function. I could do mod E7, G7. Notice I'm just taking the cells we know. So it's simply taking those two cells, dividing one by the other, and going to return the remainder. But because they're identical, it's going to give me 0. Of course, what I could do is simply say, no, make it E7, because it's the same number. I removed the n at the end, and so in this case, if they are different, tell me if they are multiples of each other. That's quite nice. Let's see how that works. So if I put 2, then I get 2. So they're clearly not multiples of each other. If I put 6 in there, I should end up with 0. Oh, okay, these are not the same, but they are multiples of each other. So there's a number of things I can do with this if statement, and it's a really nice little statement to work with. So that's the if statement. In the next one, we're going to look at a variation on the if statement called the count if. See you in the next lesson.